Hello everyone. In this video, what we're going to do is create this. So we'll add a menu item called Dialog, and when you click on that, you'll get an option called Show Dialog. And when you click on this, it will show you a dialog. And this is the name of the dialog box. This is the header. This is the form element, and this is the text box, and this is the button. Now you can see that this is created using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you can see that the content on this content in this dialog is HTML. The styling, this in center, the border around the form element, the button being green, and the text in the button in the center is done using CSS. And the fact that when I click on this button and this closes, it's a JavaScript functionality added through JavaScript. So this is what we're going to do. Just one quick disclaimer that this is not a tutorial for how to write HTML, CSS, or JavaScript at all. So in this, I'll just only focus on how to include CSS, HTML, and JavaScript in your app script project. No matter where you are using it, I'm just using Google Sheets to demonstrate it. But wherever you are using app script, this is the same way that you will include your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you can see that I already have all of this written over here. So let's go ahead and delete all of this. Okay, so let's begin. Before doing anything, let's create an HTML file by clicking on this add button, select HTML, and call this index, and click enter. And this is your HTML file, pretty basic. So what we're going to do is add a form element over here. So now that we have this, we'll start with a header tag. And okay, and this is my first dialog box. Next, we're going to add a form element, and let's close this tag as well. And inside this form element, we are going to have our first input, and the type is going to be text. And let's give it a name as well. Type something here, and close this input tag. And we are going to give it a gap using br tag. Also, let's use the br tag over here as well. And the next input we are going to have is of type submit, and the value is also going to be submit. And there you go. Now we're going to write our code. So the first function that we are going to write is to basically render this HTML over here. So let's call it render HTML. And yeah, let's create a variable called template. In this, we are going to store our template is from HTML, basically what we have over here. So HTML service class we'll call, and then we will use create template from file. And the file that we're using to create the template is index, and this is done. Now we're going to create an HTML object. So I'm also naming this HTML. You can name this anything you want, and we're going to call it template, and we're going to use evaluate and set width. Let's use 500 pixels. Okay, great. Now we're going to add this to our UI. So we're going to call spreadsheet app class, and we're going to call a function called get UI, and we're going to show modal dialog. And in this modal dialog, you can see the first thing is your object, a user interface, and our user interface is this. So we're going to use HTML, because this is where we are storing the template from here, and evaluating and setting width as well. So this is our HTML. By the way, you can also name it user interface if that makes more sense to you, and then you can just write user interface over here. And let's give it a name. Let's give it a name called a dialog box. Save this. Now, when you will run it for the first time, it will ask you for some permissions, and you just have to allow. And sometimes you might also get like an advanced option over here to can be before you can allow permission to this script for accessing your sheet. But anyway, once you have given that permission, after that you click run again, and if everything is fine, it should render a dialog box over here, and you can see that this is the name that we gave it, a dialog box. And we have a dialog box over here, and we had our index, and you can see that we have our, this is my first dialog box over here, and then your input, and then you have a submit button, which is this. Now you can see that when I click submit, nothing really happens because we have not added any JavaScript functionality to this right now. And you'll do this in a while, but before that, let's add some style to this. And let's create another HTML file and call this style sheet, and remove everything here. Before using the sheet, let's come here. Now generally what we do is we add our style on top of our HTML file, and we can write down anything that we want here. So let's give our header some basic style. So we have h2, and let's give it a font size of 24 pixels. Give it a color similar, actually just 333. You can add any hex code over here, so I'm just using random hex code, the first thing that popped in my head. Anyway, text align, I want it to be center the American English way, and save this. Now when I click this HTML render HTML, then it should render this entire HTML along with this style. That means my header will be styled. So let's do that and see. And you can see that now my header is in the center, and the size and color is also set according to what I wanted it to be. Anyway, now what we don't want to do is keep adding our CSS over here. So what we want to do is basically separate this and put it over here. And what we want is a way to basically include it over here, right? So what I want to do is when I click on render HTML, I want some way or some function that reads all of this and puts it over here and then renders it along with my HTML. And for this, we are going to use a very simple thing called a function called include. And basically, you can name this function anything, but we are using it to include something in our HTML file. So we are going to just use this name include. But before this, let's save it like this. And let's look at this. Now we have removed our CSS from here and we have put it over here. And what happens if we run it now? And you can see that this is back in its original place. So there's no CSS anymore. So we want to be able to include something over here. So for this, what we're going to do is write a function over here and name it include. And in this, we want to give a file name, which is going to be whatever file you want to include over there. If you want to include our CSS file over here, then I will pass the name of the CSS file, and later we will create a JavaScript file, and then I want to be able to include my JavaScript file. So basically, what we are going to do is a very simple thing, is that I want to take this file and I want to return something, and I want to return it as HTML. So I will get HTML service, and this time I will use create HTML output from file, and we are going to give it the file name, and we are going to get content. Right now, what will happen is that whenever we'll give it any file, it will take that file and it will create an HTML output from it and take its content, and wherever we want it, we can put it now. So we want to be able to add that function over here. Now you can see that this is HTML, and the way you add app script function in HTML is pretty basic. It's pretty simple. You just have to remember these three things. One, your angle bracket. So your angle bracket will have your two question marks, and within this question mark you'll write your function. So basically within this question mark you'll write exclamation and equals, and in between all of this, so you can see that you have starting from angle bracket and question mark and ending with question mark and angle bracket. In between this, you will write your exclamation and equals, and you will write the app script function that you want to run here. So you want to run include over here, And you see that include takes an argument called file name. So our file name is style sheet because that is the file that we want to include over here. So we'll take style sheet over here and we'll add it over here. Now, if everything runs fine, then our CSS should be back over there. So let's run it. And our CSS is back. So basically, yeah, we have included our CSS successfully at this point. And where is it coming from? It's coming from over here. So now let's add more CSS, and this time I'm just gonna copy paste from my previous code. So let's give our form some style. So I've just given my form some basic thing. I've set its width, margin, padding, gave it a border and rounded its corner, and then gave it a little bit of shadow and some background color. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to style our input tags, and we're going to use input type text, and we gave this a little bit of style, very simple. Then we are going to give our submit some style, right? And let's give it a hover state as well. So when somebody hovers a button over it, we want the background color to change a bit. And Control S, run this again. And yeah, you can see that we have this over here. So yeah, basically this is what it is. We took our form element, we took our input, and we took our input type submit. Now basically I have used the exact because I didn't write too many form elements, so I just didn't need IDs for it. But you can also add IDs here. So form and ID, give it an ID, and give this input an ID, give this input an ID if you have a lot of inputs and submits and other things. So because if you have had, let's say, 3 more inputs that had the same type as text, all of them will get the same style. And if you want to style them separately, then you would want to give each of them a separate ID and style them separately over here. But I had only one input type text and only one input type submit, so I just used the tag itself over here. And yeah, now that this works, and if I run this, I am still not able to do anything with the submit because we have not added any JavaScript. So what we want to do is add some JavaScript. Now in our HTML, we can go at the bottom and just add JavaScript the plain old way. And we can write a simple line of code, basically to close the dialog box, and we'll write google dot script dot host dot close, and this is the script that will that should basically close it. But now we want to bind it to this, right? So what we want to do is we want to write a function, and this is basically a function to handle form submission, handle form, you can name it anything, by the way, handle form submit. And in this I want to include this. Let's indent this for clarity. And now let's run this. Let's see whether something happens. Okay, nothing is happening. I think I know why. Yeah, in this form, we need to add a few more things. Basically, we want to add an on submit. So on submit, I want to run a function, and the function that I want to run is this handle form submit, and I want to write this over here, and I want to return false. Okay, so basically on submit, I want this function to run. So if everything is right, when I click submit, it closes. Great. So Now, what we want to do is, now because our script is pretty small, but imagine if you had like a longer form and with each element you want to do something. So you'll have a very long script. So how to include it over here is pretty simple. Just like style sheet, we will create another HTML, call it um, our index.js. So basically JavaScript for index. And we'll take this whole thing and paste it over here. And now we will include this here, and to include this, and now you can see that now that we have removed it, your on submit button will not work. So if I click it, nothing really happens. Nothing happens. So let's come here, and again, your AppScript way of adding AppScript function is angle brackets. Actually, yeah, angle brackets. Within this question mark, within this exclamation equals, and in between we want to write include function, and I want to use this file now. I want to include this file's content. So index.js, and now that we've included it, okay, index.js is not defined. Oh, my bad. It should be a string like this. So quotes. Now let's run this. And yeah, so we have a dialog box over here. Write anything, and we submit, and your JavaScript functionality is added. And now basically when I'm running this, I am not doing anything with this input right now, but you can write your functionality to do anything with this as well. uh, Now again, since this wasn't a tutorial for that, so I haven't done it here, but maybe in future I'll create some video about it. But yeah, this is how you include your style sheet, your JavaScript in your HTML, and then you render it in your sheet. Now, we used sheet. You can create a whole website over here and render it as a web app when you use your deploy, and you can deploy that as a web app, and that is how you can deploy it as a website. So yeah, this is how you do it. One last thing that we're going to do is just add a button over here so that we don't have to come every time over here to do this. For this, we're going to just write a quick function called, actually first, function create menu, and I want to do I want to add that menu, spreadsheet app dot get UI, and dot create, not create add-on menu, create menu, and the name of this menu I want to give dialog. Actually, let's separate this out. Dot add item, and the item that we want to add, the name of that item is going to be show dialog, and the function that I want to run is this render HTML, and then I want to add this to UI. This is done. Let's run create menu, run this, and now you have a dialog button over here, so you can just come here, click here, and something, submit, done. Okay, great. So this is how you use CSS, JavaScript in your HTML, and then render it on your Google Sheet and add it as a button as well, a menu item as well. So this is your menu, show dialog, and there you go, your HTML UI with CSS and JavaScript. Anyway, if you have any suggestions for me, like if you want me to cover any project, if you have any, like if you're struggling with something, let me know, and I will definitely create a video on it. Now, when, I'm not so sure, because finding time is really difficult these days. I think it's always going to be difficult. Also because YouTube is not my source of income. This is what I do as a hobby. So I do this in my free time. So I'll try to do it more and more. And because I feel like free things should be there for everyone, because not everybody is very privileged to go for courses. And I learned everything on my own by reading and by watching videos and everything. So yeah, just trying to make things easier for everyone else. And in that pursuit, if I can improve anything, I would love some feedback. And it would be great if you subscribe. Shows actually gives a boost to, you know, the willpower that goes into finding time into creating all of this. So yeah, I don't know. It just feels good. It's like maybe that can be your way of letting me know that hey, you're doing a good thing and we support you. Yeah, that's all. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.